Hi, I'm Farah Danish. Welcome to my Calm Autism Mom podcast. I'm a certified brain gym movement facilitator, former special educator, and a mindset coach. Through my podcast, I bring together parents, experts from educational, psychology, and medical communities to share innovative insights on parenting and supporting individuals on the spectrum. My mission is simple: to continuously learn and share the latest autism related news and strategies, bringing you powerful conversations and practical solutions you can use right now. So, if you're an autism mom searching for answers, support, or just some real inspiration, you're in exactly the right place, my friend. Let's transform your autism parenting journey starting right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm super excited to introduce you to Dr. Esther Michael, who's an absolute rock star in the child development world. For over a decade, Dr. Esther has been revolutionizing how we approach child development. She's not just any OT. She heads an incredible team of specialized occupational therapists and collaborates with doctors, therapists, and schools to provide expert training. What makes Dr. Esther's approach so special, she's loaded with certifications in sensory integration, astronaut training protocol. I mean, come on, and floor time. But here's the thing I love most: she believes in the power of play as a serious developmental tool. This passion led her to create the Toy Pharmacy, where she's developed these amazing therapeutic kits and techniques. Her whole philosophy is play with purpose, making therapy fun and accessible for both kids and adults. I cannot wait to dive into this conversation today and show you how, and she's basically going to be showing you how you can use practical strategies from her right away in your homes. So grab your notes, get your favorite drink. This episode promises to be packed with actionable tips you don't want to miss. Hello. Thank you so much, Dr. Esther, for being on my podcast today. I am so excited to speak to an occupational therapist. I've never had one before on my show, and I'm really looking forward to get some amazing insights and learn a lot of things from you. So thank you for coming.
You're welcome. I'm so glad I could be here.
So, Esther, before we dive into, I've got loads of questions. And before I start diving in and asking you all those questions, I want to ask you about why occupational therapy? I mean, as an autism mom, I know that the first thing I started doing with my son was speech, because that's the thing I saw was missing. And I'm like, okay, I need to work on speech straight away, and I need to do ABA therapy on him. OT, I had no idea what OT was. And it was one of those things recommended, and sure, I did it. And what made me shift from speech to OT, direct most of my funds towards OT, was when I started seeing Suleiman become more participative, more involved, more interactive. And I'm like, okay, I think that's what my child needs right now rather than speech. And then I was able to make that shift. But that's for me as a mom. What was it about OT that drove you towards it? Like, for you to think that, okay, this looks like something I could definitely pursue and enjoy while I'm doing it. Because you definitely look like you're having a great time on Instagram, doing what you do.
A little bit of background. So both my parents are doctors, and growing up, I was kind of exposed to this entire medical world and everything. And I knew I wanted to help people, and I think I felt like the only let's do what's right in front of me. They're doctors. I want to be a doctor. Let's make it work. So, when I applied to medical school, I didn't know what OT was actually at that time, like most people. And I was like, when I saw a description, I was like, oh, okay, it's helping people. It's helping people who have, special needs, or they have some kind of injury or something like that. it looks interesting. That was honestly plan B at the time. And later, when I did apply and go through the whole process of it, all of the other doors were shut, and only OT school had accepted me. It was the only college that accepted me.
Was meant to be.
Yes, it was like it was meant to be, yeah. And at the time it didn't feel like that because I was quite upset with what had happened and everything. If I'm being really honest. But and 1 week into OT school, and I was like, nope, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I love it. I can see myself doing this every day. And the 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 interesting thing was my parents were like, "Are you sure this is gonna be okay, Alec?" Because they wanted to make sure that later I would regret not taking my chance at that time. I was like, "No, no, this is great. I think I'm gonna enjoy it." I think what got me to love OT was the fact that I could bring uh there's a Hindi word called jugaad, which is basically a person's ability to use whatever they have to make it
Hustle.
work, to hustle. Yes, you know what I. So it's like I think my husband laughs about this. So, for example, I have a little one at home, and she's an explorer. She likes to go everywhere to look at things, and she's at this age where all the cupboards need to be open and everything needs to be taken out. So I was like, I don't know about child locks. I'm not sure if we're ready for child locks per se. The whole, put the thing in, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you have time for that. And so I took these baggage tags, and I kind of interlocked them on the two handles, and
Uh,
that's an example of jugaad. Found a way to help people with that skill, and it was very, very fulfilling because you can OT seems to be helping people creatively. I think that's one way I could. It's like an
that's
overview of
good
things. Yeah,
down.
that's how I see it.
That's amazing. And when you started off, what was your experience like? I mean, because obviously what you learn in school, and you're in your safe clinical like environment, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
this looks like something I can do. It's easy to then say that, right?
Yeah.
But when you have to actually get your hands in
Mm.
and do the groundwork,
Hmm.
um, that's when realization sets in. So what was that like?
The first year that we start off like OT school and everything. We start with clinical posting, and we have a lot of exposure to uh, kids with cerebral palsy or people with spinal cord injury or brain injury, and we're interacting with their families. Obviously, there is a a senior therapist involved, but we're assigned to go and support and help, or hold the yeah, to go get this particular equipment, or hold the thing while I'm supporting them or something like that. And it was really interesting because I was exposed to all of these people who are in probably the most difficult time of their lives, trying to figure it out for themselves and their
Mhm.
extended family. So, and it looked like, because the weight of the diagnosis was a lot, we had to really go into the minute details of their lives because they needed help. So things about toileting or things about dressing themselves, and all of that, because they needed help with all of those things. Now, for example, there was this one mother we were working with. She was doing all of these exercises to kind of stand up, sit down. She was paralyzed from the waist down, and she had a 1.5-year-old, 2-year-old little chunky boy running around the rehab center room where everyone was sitting and doing these exercises,
So
and she
what
was.
it was a mom who was paralyzed from waist down, and she had a 2-year-old child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Wow.
the incident probably happened after her child was born.
Yeah.
Um, Probably she was in an accident. Um,
Right.
Unfortunately, she was paralyzed from the waist down. So she had all her gear on her legs to kind of help her stand up, and then sit down with the support of a walker and the gear. So she was doing all these exercises, and we were like, okay, pumping her, let's go. And it came to a point on that specific day, she's like, I'm done. I don't want to do anymore. I need a break. Just leave me alone. Go
Yeah.
away, sort of thing. She was really upset. Maybe it was a combination of everything. Um, but then the senior OT who was with me as we were assigned to her on that specific day was like, look at what's in front of you. And this little chunky thing is running around everywhere, pulling people's walkers and sticks. And, it's like, okay, this full of bubbly life just lying around. And he was like, look at your child. That is why you're working. That is why you're you're working and doing all of these exercises. And she took a minute. She stood back. She took a deep breath, and then she continued doing, these exercises. And she was like, and I don't know why that's just stuck with me, because it showed me the grit of,
A
the
mother.
person themselves. And
Right.
also I've seen the intense amount of um, resilience that the extended family also needs. There
Yep.
was this other lady next to this particular mom. She slipped in the bathroom. She had a fall. She fell. There was a brain injury, and the person who was taking care of her was the neighbor's son. They're probably family friends. Her
Okay.
husband left her, the kid,
Oh,
and he went with the child. And she doesn't. I don't think anyone broke the news to her. So there
or
was
the
this.
left
The husband
her
left,
taking the child.
and they're taking the child. Yeah, and she was left in this getting this therapy. And the extended family was trying to do everything for her, from bathing to cleaning and everything. And and we were not sure if her personality was still there. She was probably taking a lot of information in. But it, the
No.
grit, I mean, to show up every day, to do what you need to do for that specific person, because if you don't, they don't have anyone else.
Yeah.
And all of those things just stuck with me, because I was like, we need to help out. There's someone who needs to help out here.
I mean, these insights are so, I mean, not insights, these experiences must have been so powerful in shaping your perspective, shaping how, that a child is not just a child. There's so many things going on inside
Mm-hmm.
of this child
Mm-hmm.
and around this child. So
Mm-hmm.
it just allows you to to do what you do so well.
Yeah.
And, like for most moms, just the example you were talking about, that you need a very strong why to move on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
with so many moms that I coach, we're human beings. We all, our emotional and mental state is fluctuating all the time. And sometimes we look at that same child and he's no longer a reason for us to keep moving on. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
really? But really, I mean, can I do this? He's not progressing. One
Mm-hmm.
assessment report changes everything. Like a mom will be doing fine. She'll be working on the child. She'll be laser focused. And this is what he needs to do. She's done her work, okay, to the best of her abilities. She goes and gets another reassessment done. The reassessment report says that your child is really way below his peers, even now, even after everything you've done. And that why just goes. You're like, why am I even doing this? They start questioning, why am I even doing this?
Mm-hmm.
So it's painful to watch that, but then I also see the same resilience and grit you were talking about. It comes back, and I see that even in their kids. And I tell them that if you show resilience and grit, your child will show it too.
Mm-hmm.
To feed off that energy. So
Mm-hmm.
in your experience where you have worked with kids, have you seen that where, okay, the assessment reports does say this, but I know for a fact that this child can do more.
Yes, you know what? I feel like I want to ask you this question. Maybe your perspective is will help me. maybe it's important. Um, why is it that for a parent, why is it so important to compare your child with peers?
Yeah, I think for me, my one of my most liberating and life-changing moments was when I stopped doing that.
Mm,
This need to keep up, this need keep my child has to be exactly like the other child,
mm,
and I have to fight to make that happen.
mm,
I once I got rid of that, it was very, very difficult to peel off me because I
mm,
think we all naturally like that, right? We keep comparing, we want to fit in. Human beings by nature, we want to fit in, whatever that mold is, we choose that mold and then we want to fit into that, right? We force
mhm,
ourselves sometimes. And I think for me, the most liberating thing was I have been down that journey. So I'm not judging any mom. I think we all need to go through that to appreciate what it's like to not be doing that anymore.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
it's been
mhm.
so liberating. And I have been able to take Suleiman to wherever he is now. He's nowhere near his peers for sure, but
Yeah.
he's a happier person. He's learning in his own way. And he now understands that we appreciate and respect his pace of learning.
Mhm,
And he's not
mhm.
being pushed and
Yeah.
forced into, learning at that you have by this time you have to have completed this.
Mhm,
I think he knows that. And now he likes being with us. He enjoys being with us.
mhm.
Before he would always avoid us. He would stay away from us because like,
Mhm.
okay, it'll be another therapy session with mom, another therapy session with dad. That's what we become.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what has that been like for you? I
It's
mean, if
it's interesting that you would say that it is. I like the two things that you said. You said it was liberating, and then that you choose the mold that you fit in. That was really deep because sometimes when it comes to these assessment reports from the other point of view, it's
Right.
while I'm trying to get their attention to this is what he was before, but this is where he is now, and comparing the child from before and after, the parent is stuck on peers.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we were trying to highlight, or I was trying to highlight, this is where how far you've come. But I feel like if a parent misses that,
Yeah.
then half the work I've done all this time is undone because you're not seeing progress. You're
Oh yeah.
seeing how far you've not come versus how far you have come.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, like you said, it doesn't just affect you as a person, as a mom, as a parent, it affects the child as well. Because you're trying to handle your own emotion and then you're not
Yeah.
available to co-regulate with your child.
Yeah. I Okay, that's very powerful. You mentioned about co-regulation. I think co-regulation has become such a hot topic, and it's
Mm,
now like, and I'm glad it has. I'm glad it's taking the attention that it deserves because most moms don't know how to just be with their child. It's all about meeting a checklist that have
mm,
I done this? Have I done this? I get this so many times, Esther, from moms saying that, we've got multiple tabs open in our head,
mm-hmm,
and they're all checklists, right? This
mm-hmm,
one has to be dropped in this therapy, and then I have to do this exercise with him, then I have to have this drill with him because, two speech sessions a week is not going to cut it. So I
mm-hmm.
have to be implementing and doing these things at home. So they
Yeah.
are like constantly working on this. And I get this question a lot. I struggled a bit with it too, to be more occupational therapy like questions that I'm going to be asking you now is the whole thing about sensory diet and, how to make sure that I'm regulating my child using these sensory diet tools
Mm-hmm.
appropriately. What is and what isn't a sensory diet? And before we get into that, what is sensory diet like?
Yeah, so like you said, we need to clarify what is a sensory diet and what it is not. Textbook, a sensory diet is basically um, a set of activities that a child needs to do or engage in to help them stay regulated. Now, based on a child's profile or the assessment, or whatever it is that helped them reach that conclusion, the child would need, or the parent would need to help a child do certain activities to help them um, be available to learn.
Yeah.
Now, that could look like a little paper with specific activities that are said, okay, in the morning you do this, afternoon you do this, evening you do this, before bed, etc. But if you miss out on the other thing, which is basically, this is something I teach the parents I work with. Like, as a mom, you have a little checklist in your mind. Like, you see a behavior, your child is crying, you have that little checklist that pops up. Is he hungry? Is he tired? Is he soiled himself? Whatever. Is
Yeah.
he bored? Whatever that is. So you have that checklist that comes up. So you would just add this extra bit to it. Now that extra bit is basically understanding a specific child or your child's regulated signs and dysregulated signs. Now, a state of regulation is I'm calm, I feel safe, I want to learn. But a dysregulated sign is about I'm not calm, I don't feel safe, I don't want to learn. Now,
Mm.
those behaviors in children could look very different. Now, it could look like I'm spinning on an axis or I'm throwing toys. That could be
Mm.
a child's dysregulated sign. But a regulated sign could be eye contact without being told. Uh,
Yeah.
More words that are being said. Um,
More interaction.
yes, more interaction. And it'll be very easy to transition from one task to the other.
Another.
That means
Yeah.
a child is regulated. But
Yeah.
if all of these things are not happening, that means a child is dysregulated and he or she needs some more time to get there. Now, what are the
Mm.
activities that you would do to get a child from this regulated state, from a dysregulated state to a regulated state, is basically what a sensory diet would help with. Now, it's it's interesting because the sensory diet, the word seems to be thrown around as a get out of jail card, which is basically, oh, your child has autism, you need a sensory diet. But while that is true, but there's so much more beyond just this piece of paper that tells you, hey, you need to do XYZ activity. Because if you don't understand your child's regulated or dysregulated side, you're going to be doing whatever trying to get it. And most often I see moms getting overwhelmed with, I don't have this equipment at home, I cannot help my child, I cannot do this particular
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah.
Or
Mm.
they're like, I'm traveling, my child's dysregulated, their mom guilt builds up.
Yeah.
And that's a big burden to bear, because just because you have not understood or somebody hasn't sat down to take you through that process to understand your child's, what is regulation for your child and what is dysregulation. Once you understand that, once you understand the principle, it will be very easy to do these specific activities
Mm.
wherever you are, whatever situation you are. Because as a mom, I think it pushes you to think creatively.
Mm.
You don't have a spoon. What do? You're thinking creatively all the time as a mom. You're
Yeah.
constantly trying to adapt. So
Yeah.
this would help you, understand what your child would need. Now, for example, if a child, I used to work with a child who, she used to spin a lot and then she used to scream, like screeching, like it was difficult to stay in the same room that she was in
Wow.
because she was trying to regulate. And I was like, okay, let's put her in the swing. She needs to spin, so let's put her in the swing. Uh, so put her in the swing. She comes out. She goes to the classroom. She is screaming again. What went wrong? I was like, why is this still happening? What's wrong here? I had to then go there and look, why is she getting dysregulated? This means she is dysregulated. She's screaming because she's dysregulated. So I go there, I'm trying to figure out. Then I realize there's too much going on. She's not able to process what the teacher is saying. And then she's screaming. On the other extreme, a child shuts down. He goes into his corner, he sits there, he's not doing anything, or he sits with this one particular toy and he's going and and he's just sitting there with that specific
Kind of that.
toy and he's just doing that. And the rest of
That's
the
his
class
way
is
of,
doing their own thing.
so that's his way of calming himself and bringing himself to a state where he can function for the rest of the day.
Exactly, exactly. You've I mean, as moms, you would know this. Like if your child has overwhelmed you by whatever they were going through, they were sad, they were angry, they were hungry, and for whatever reason on that particular day, it is too much to take. You We all go through that as moms, up and down and whatever. You go through a dysregulated state. You go through your own regulated state. There are some times you can take it, some days you can't. Sometimes you can take the screaming, and sometimes you can't. What is
Yeah.
it that helps you go from a regulated state to a dysregulated, or from a state
Or
of dysregulation to regulation? What is that? What are those specific activities that help you do that? And then you would then understand your child better. So, this is the second part of what I ask some moms to do. Make your own list of what are your regulated signs and what are your dysregulated signs. Once you
Mm.
figure that out, you're talking about it to your partner, and when your partner sees it, then you're like, hey, I think you need a break. Go be go 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 do what you need to do to stay regulated, and then you come back and you can be mom again.
So, but if as an educator or as a mom, if I have to work with my child who is regulating himself using a toy and, stimming with the toy, and
Mm.
that's his way of regulating, how do I know how much time should I be giving him, or should I be part of this session to help him, to co-regulate with him, or should I just back off and let him do his thing? Like, how do I know how long this should be, or how I can support my child in that?
Honestly, if a child's brain has been deprived of a state of being regulated long enough, they are going to do it for a long period of time.
Okay.
I've had sessions where a child was in the circuit. He was climbing the ladder, going on the rope ladder, coming down the slide, again going for 45 minutes. His body didn't stop.
Wow.
And then towards the end, like the last 5 minutes, or maybe he did this for 40 minutes, the last 5 minutes, I could see eye contact. I could see him slow down. That's when he got regulated. There was this other
Just
child.
5 minutes of that to give you
Yes,
that eye contact and
yes,
oh
yes.
wow. That
So then, when I gave him let's do handwriting, he finished it in 5 minutes. What I would have taken to do the whole 45 minutes because of the whining and the moving and the.
yeah,
He finished it in 5 minutes and was done. But it took him that much time to get to that point, and that needs to be okay. It's fine for him to do that.
that's really, really important. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because a lot of moms are, and I was one of them. I'd go into a session where my child would need that kind of time. And I'm like, oh my God, I can just see money fly at that time, right? Huh? Really, that's what it
Yeah.
is. And I'm like, oh my God, my child, why is he not complying? And then I would see the therapist giving him his space to regulate. And I'm like, this therapist, she's just being lazy.
Mm, mm,
Not thinking, right? You're just going downhill from there, the thought process. But with what you just mentioned now, what I'm hearing and what I'm understanding is that you gave and you respected that child's space and need for regulation at his pace. And that is
yeah.
such a powerful message you're giving to the child, because next time the child walks in, he's happily walking in because he understands that you give him that freedom to work at his pace.
Let me
And that's
clarify that a little bit more. So, I'm reading this book.
okay.
It's called The Nurture Revolution. It's great. If you can get it, get it. It's
Nurture revolution. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So this is written by a neuroscientist. But anyways, now when the whole point of therapy, especially for the neurodivergent child, is to have a therapist who is calm. Now, for
Mm.
example, now the child is at home, the child is dysregulated. The mom sees it, she is dysregulated because the child's dysregulated. Now the
Vicious
child
cycle.
looking at the mom, now he gets even more dysregulated, and then this goes on like a cycle. There's
Yeah.
no break for either of them.
Mm.
Now you come into this therapy, there's this new person who might have some knowledge that is helping her regulate. Let's say I'm using knowledge to help myself regulate in this particular state. I know probably this is why the child is, engaging in XYZ behavior. When you come into that space, it's not just about the equipment, but how a therapist holds that space.
Yeah.
That is why you pay the money. It's because now when you come into a therapy session and the therapist themselves is dysregulated, for example,
Mm.
your child's going to mimic that. You are going to mirror that.
Yeah.
Now, we want the whole point of regulation is to release dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins to get all the happy hormones to move from a state of flight or fright to rest and digest.
Yeah.
Now, if that doesn't happen, learning doesn't happen. Whatever you
Mm.
tell the child, it's gone over the head. But if so, this is something we do as a strategy as well. So let's say a child comes in for their OT session, we do all of these things. I hold the space for the child to regulate, and then they go for a speech session. It's night and day.
Oh
So the
yeah.
speech is much easier, and this is the reason why, because we've spent time building that foundation of regulation. So when a demand is placed on them, they're able to cope.
Yeah.
That regulated state is enough for them to overcome the cortisol or the
That
stress
makes
hormone
yeah.
state. Yeah, the
Yeah.
flight or fright state has been
Right.
overcome because
Yeah.
of the peace I have brought into that situation.
Yeah. That safe space. And when you are in that safe space, you think creatively, you think logically, like higher
Yes,
order reasoning and thinking
yes,
stuff. Even for a neurodiverse child, I've
yes,
I've been surprised at some of the things that they're able to do. But it's just that when they are forced into this stressful situation of comply, okay, 10 minutes of regulation was enough, and now we need to move on.
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
we don't see
We
that,
don't
and
get that.
yeah,
No.
yeah,
And as
and
a therapist as well, I've had to catch myself from being dysregulated in a session. Just like you said, that's exactly the thoughts in my head. Oh, this mom is here in this session. This child's not wanting to comply. I think she's thinking I'm wasting her time and money. That's what I'm thinking as well. And that's dysregulating me. But if I'm
oh,
yes, it, but if I'm stubborn about it, I sometimes have to say it's okay and educate the mom saying that this is what I'm doing. This
mm,
is what your child's doing. This is what I'm seeing. And
mm,
then
mm,
when
mm.
that happens, I have brought the mom into a state of regulation, and
Mm.
thereby I have affected the child to stay in a place of regulation.
Yeah,
So
because the
it's
mom
all,
is
yes,
picking it up
and
from the mom
yes, and
first.
so all these dynamics are happening without a word being said sometimes.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
looks like a waste of time. It looks
yeah.
like I'm not doing anything, but all of these things, these hormonal changes, this transfer of peace is going on.
Mm.
So that
So,
peace then helps him in a place where a demand is put on him.
so Esther, if a mom is to work with a child, or if she wants to work
Mm-hmm.
with her child at home, and especially during learning sessions,
Mm-hmm.
would you suggest that she should use the same? But yeah, okay, I think you did answer that in a way by saying that you have to notice when the child is heading towards dysregulation and when he's regulated, and then you change the momentum as and when needed. But do you think that this is something that, because most neurodiverse kids have sensory needs,
Mm-hmm.
they're either
Mm-hmm.
chewing on stationery or they're chewing on their clothes. How can a parent help them at that time while she's trying to get some work done from the child? Like, how does that look like? How would a session like that look like for a mom?
So let's say, okay, this is good. This is good. A rule cannot be broken if it was never made.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say that again. A
Yes,
rule,
hashtag, oh my God.
a rule cannot be broken if it was never made.
I
Now,
have to
who?
write this and make sure my kids never see it. Oh,
Yeah. So
yeah.
there are times like I want to reiterate this. Now, when you have a child, okay, you made this little checklist for your child, but you're also making this checklist for yourself. Now,
Mm,
I feel like for myself, if I don't make the rule, even if it's not followed, it's okay. But if I've made the rule and it's not followed, I immediately go into dysregulation.
mm,
I'm talking about me, myself, as a therapist or as a mom.
yeah.
I'm going into dysregulation because I made a rule and it was not followed. I
Mm,
feel whatever I'm feeling. I feel disrespected. I feel, and my anxiety is coming up, and then the mom guilt and everything. But if I change the rules to, I think inclusion starts at home, where if I
yeah.
change the rule to say, you're dysregulated today, that's okay. Mama's not going to put this on you, and that's okay. But again,
Mm,
we need to get work done. For example, I need a child to transition out of a session.
mm,
I then put it on myself. I need to work on regulation. 45 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. I need to work on myself to stay regulated. I need my child to get into a state of regulation. And usually, I've seen this so many times, it doesn't go beyond an hour and a half. If you are
mm,
consistent and you do, and you're, what's the word for it? I'm going to stay stubborn. I'm not going to let you spoil my peace. I'm
mm,
not going to let your chaos affect my peace.
mm,
If you persist there, it doesn't
mm.
take more than 1.5 hours. Or sometimes it's even half an hour. Sometimes it's 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah.
And then
Because the
once,
child understands how this works.
yes,
And that
yes,
from 1.5 hour it becomes 1 hour, then 20 minutes,
yes,
15 minutes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you get
Mm,
work done,
mm.
but in the pace your child needs, not in your pace.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is key to take
That's
away
the
from here.
that's the whole point. That's the whole point of inclusion. We we're out screaming, "Hey, all of you need to include my child," but at home we're
Okay.
struggling as a parent, as a mom,
Yeah.
because of rules we have made for ourselves,
Mm,
and we're going into dysregulation. We've made all these rules, and the
yeah.
child's not able to cope. We've not included them.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Somewhere on some level we haven't either accepted.
Mm.
It all comes
It's
from there.
hard.
It
It's
is.
hard.
It's
It's
really
hard.
hard.
It's very
But
hard.
we don't know that that's where it's coming from.
Mm, mm,
The acceptance hasn't happened. Inclusion in our own homes hasn't happened.
mm.
And you're right. It's very difficult as a parent to accept that maybe I need to change some things in my own house first
Yeah,
before I start
yeah,
looking outside for inclusion and
yeah,
validation or whatever
yeah,
that is for
yeah,
parents.
yeah. It's tough, and it's difficult because if you haven't seen any other pattern, what are you going to fall back on?
What do you know?
You're you're reinventing the wheel here. You're doing
That's
something nobody around you is doing, so you're
Mhm.
literally learning on the go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
And that constant thought that what if this is wrong? What I'm doing is wrong? That
it's
guilt.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the weight of it's a very heavy burden. It's a very heavy weight to carry.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot more strength and love for autism moms. It's tough being a parent, let
Mm,
alone being an autism parent. I mean, it's
mm,
tough being a parent, not taking anything away from a neurotypical child's mom as well. Parenting is tough, but parenting on a child on the spectrum can be even more you know difficult. And I don't want to use the word draining because it is. It can be draining at times.
it's
Uh,
I feel like I'll just say this. I feel like being a parent forces you to heal parts of you that you didn't know needed healing.
Needed healing. Oh yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
And
I,
that's what
I
is
see that
hard.
all the time. I see that all the time, Esther, because when I am in my, again, it's always about the moms, always about the
Mm,
moms. And I'm sitting down and talking to moms. At the end of my conversation, it's always something else that is triggering or bothering them, and that's coming out.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
anyway, but that's a different, topic for a different podcast in the future. But it was lovely, lovely having you here, Esther. And thank you for all your valuable insights. And, please continue doing what you do. We need more occupational therapists like you who don't look at it just as a job, but
Mm-hmm.
actually see the person as a whole sitting in front of them and their family as well, and not just, a checklist, another kid that they have to work with on that
Right,
day.
right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.